David Lee Miller reporting on that fateful morning. Joined now by New York Congressman Peter King. He's the chairman of the House Homeland Security Committee, and he is down at Ground Zero and joins me now. Congressman, welcome. Good to speak to you today.
Good morning, Martha. Thank you, Martha. Thank you very much.
You know, your thoughts, you have done so much work on the Homeland Security Committee trying to help keep the nation safe over the course of these 11 years. Your thoughts on the number of attacks that have been thwarted and how we're doing in that effort.
Actually, Martha, we're doing very well. I mean, all of us lost so many friends and neighbors, constituents on September 11th. I remember being here with President Bush just a few days afterwards, and all of us expected another attack. Nobody ever thought the World Trade Center would come back the way it has, but we've stopped many, many attacks. Here in New York City alone, there have been 14 attacks attempted against New York since September 11th. But at the national level, with the work that President Bush did, continued by President Obama, coordinating all the intelligence agencies, what's been going on here in New York with the NYPD, with the job that they are doing, it's just we are so much more safe than we were on 9/11. Having said that, the enemy has also adapted. And even though there cannot be another 9/11 type attack, they are trying to recruit people under the radar screen, and we have to be on our guard as much as we ever were, because the last thing we ever want to do is see any type of a terrorist attack succeed in this country.
Yeah, you know, we have to be nimble, of course, as you say. And those who want to hurt us are constantly evolving and, trying to think around ways to get by the things that we have put in place. And we were just at the conventions and the perimeters around those buildings and the difficulty getting into them. A lot of people started complaining, that it's overdone, that we've, sort of gone too far protecting every single building that, houses these kind of events across the country. What do you think about that?
Nobody would have said that on September 12th. The fact is, we all said on September 11th that we now live in a new world. And part of that new world means we have to have security that we didn't have before. And at times it can be annoying, at times it can slow us down. But I'd rather be delayed 5, 10, or 15 minutes than be blown apart or have my children or grandchildren blown apart. I mean, that's the world we live in. And listen, we always have to try to adjust and adapt. Sometimes we can modify some of the security. Sometimes we have to increase it. But again, I see the intelligence reports. I know, and others know as well, certainly Commissioner Kelly here in New York knows, the extent of the threat the enemy poses to us. How so many times, from so many places, they are trying to find ways to attack us, whether it's Yemen, whether it's al-Qaeda itself and the Fatah. Yeah. We can go through all of these countries where al-Qaeda is located and morphed to. And so, no, I understand, to an extent, I understand people being frustrated. But the fact is, I'd rather be frustrated than dead.
What's your biggest concern right now?
Two concerns, and they're related. One is that because we have not been successfully attacked, the American people will think the threat is no longer there. And for instance, in this presidential campaign, no one's talking about the threat of terrorism. It's as if it's Pearl Harbor or Gettysburg, something that happened a long time ago. In fact, this is a real and constant threat. And the other part of the danger is that we start pulling back on Homeland Security, that we not realize how important it is that we continue to spend money on it, that we continue to fund it, that we continue to train our police and firefighters, that we continue to have liaison between federal, state, and local police, because the sharing of information and intelligence that's going to save us. If a terrorist makes it to a train with a bomb, if he makes it onto a plane with a bomb, certainly to a train or to a bridge or a tunnel, chances are he's going to succeed. It's our job to stop them before they get there. And that can only be done by intelligence work, by aggressive police work. Yep. And we can't have groups like the Civil Liberties Union or the New York Times constantly attacking organizations such as the NYPD, who are doing such a phenomenal job.
And I would also point out civilians who in many cases have also done their part to, when they see something, say something, which has been extraordinarily effective. If you look back at some of these attempts and plans. Congressman King, it's always nice to have you with us. Thank you so much, sir.
Martha, thank you.
King co-authored that law. He joins us live now from Ground Zero. Congressman King, before we get to that act, I just want to ask you, 11 years, every time we participate in the moment of silence, every time we hear the reading of names, it seems so real, so current, so now, yet 11 years is such a long time.
11 years is a long time, but anyone who was alive on September 11th, anyone who knew anyone who was killed on September 11th, it's a day that will never go away. And yet today, being down here, there's such a vibrancy and such a sense of life I remember when I was first down here after 9/11 with President Bush, just 3 days later, it was hard to imagine that we would ever come back the way we have. But the spirit of America, the spirit of New York is here. And so we should enjoy the life that we have today, but never, ever forget the horror of September 11th. And we have to do all we can to make sure it never, ever happens again.
Congressman King, this is Brooke Baldwin here. Nice to see you. I do now.
Hey, Brooke, how are you?
I want to talk to you about the Zadroga Act, which you co-authored, and I know you're applauding now finally that this cancer coverage. But my question to you is, why did it take so long for so many people to be covered?
Brooke, this whole situation has been inexcusable. It shouldn't have taken 5 years to pass this Zadroga bill in the first place. Secondly, once it was passed, it was so obvious that these forms of cancer came from what happened here at Ground Zero. I mean, you have young men and women in their 30s and 40s in the peak of their life coming down with these rare forms of blood cancer, these rare diseases. And you have a rare disease that maybe 1 out of 100,000 people get, and 3 people working together would get it. Working together at Ground Zero. This was wrong. This was really where the government and the Congress did not do the job they were supposed to do for the heroes of 9/11. And now we have really another struggle ahead of us because these 50 new forms of cancer are covered, but the amount of money in the fund has not been increased. So we have to find ways to increase that fund. We have a moral obligation to stand by those who put their lives on the line, not just on 9/11, but in the days, weeks, and months following 9/11.
It was Senate Republicans, I think, who stripped about $3 billion out of the bill in 2010. But $2.77 billion was set aside in the bill for lost wages and other damages related to these illnesses. None of that, as of now, has been dispersed. What's the holdup there?
Well, actually, it's the whole process is ongoing. I feel that it was passed in 2010, and it is actually going according to schedule as far as the types of treatment. So I am not that concerned about the money being spent. It will be spent, and if you talk to people involved in the program, speaking to those who are going to be treated, that is moving along. The big delay was on the 50 new cancers, and the next crisis is going to come with there not being enough money in the fund. And you're right, it was taken out. It was taken out by people in my party. I said then, I'm saying it now, it's wrong. This is money. We have an absolute moral obligation. These are the same as people who have been wounded in battle. And we have an obligation to them, and I'm going to do all I can to make sure that we get that money in over the next several years.
Congressman King, just really quickly, as the chairman of the Homeland Security Committee, you now know about this book. This former, Navy SEAL wrote this book, this tell-all of what happened the day the Osama bin Laden raid went down. Talked to 60 Minutes. Does that upset you, him speaking?
Brooke, I think it was a real mistake in doing that. Listen, these guys are incredibly heroic. What they did was so monumental. But to disclose anything about that incident is wrong. It tells the enemy what our tactics and procedures are. And no matter what the Navy SEAL says about he didn't put anything sensitive in there, there has to be sensitive material there. Also, this started with the White House last year. They should never have said anything other than Osama bin Laden was killed by U.S. forces. Leave it at that. Nobody had to know it was Navy SEALs. Nobody had to know there were 2 helicopters. Okay. Nobody had to know how many men were on the operation. None of that. So anyway, it was all a mistake.
Congressman King, we appreciate you being with us from Ground Zero. Thank you. And our In Point is next.